YouTubers, it's Redlipblonde. I'm sorry I was terrible today, and I really don't care. I'm basically doing through the Spirit. I had asked, said a prayer, and asked the Lord to ask the truthful questions to the Spirit of JFK. And whenever would come into my head without me putting in my own information or my own opinion, picked up words. I have no idea what their meaning is, but now that I'm after the fact looking them up, they're linking a connection of words that are from JFK for us to examine to see if there's any connections to the words that are not just resolving his death, but things that he may want us to know in truth. So I'm continuing on. The word from the last video that I was on was Cromwell, and it led me to John Foster Dulles. So I'm reading a little bit of background about this character, and it turned out that Cromwell and Sullivan was a firm that Mr. Dulles was a participant in illegal practice, as well as a whole history of things that he has been doing. So we're going to continue on from the 1940s. Mr. James Dulles was a close, John Foster Dulles, by the way. Dulles was a close associate of Thomas E. Dewey, who became the presidential candidate of the Republican Party in the 1944 election and 1948. During the elections, Dulles served as Dewey's chief foreign policy advisor. Now, I wanted to mention, too, that foreign policy was also a word given by JFK's Spirit, so I know this is what he's referring to. In 1944, in Dewey's advice, Dulles took the active role in establishing the Republican flank, calling for the establishment of a Jewish Commonwealth in Palestine. I don't know about you, but I find that the so-called Jews, they call themselves the real Jewish people, the white Jews. I think it's not the truth of the real Jewish community, but I think they're an elite group of criminals. That's what I think, but I'll continue on. In 1945, Dulles participated in the San Francisco Conference and worked as advisor to Arthur H. von Berg and helped draft the preamble to the United States Nations Charter. He subsequently attended the United Nations General Assembly as a United States delegate in 1946, 47, and 1950. This was just prior to JFK's election. So you can see, I want to note that, I'll continue. Although Dulles has a lasting reputation as a hawk and nuclear weapons proponent, he was strongly opposed to the U.S. atomic attacks on Japan. In the immediate aftermath of the bombings, he drafted a public statement that called for international control of nuclear energy under United States auspices. Dulles wrote, "If we as a professionally Christian nation feel morally free to use atomic energy in that way, none elsewhere will accept that verdict. Atomic weapons will be looked upon as a normal part of the arsenal of war, and the stage will be set for a sudden and final destruction of mankind." Dulles never lost his anxiety about the destructive power of nuclear weapons. However, his views on international control and on employing that threat of atomic attack changed in the face of the Berlin blockade, the Soviet detonation of the A-bomb, and the advent of the Korean War, which convinced him that the communist bloc was pursuing expansionist policies. Dulles was appointed by Dewey to the United States Senate as a Republican from New York on July 7, 1949, to fill the vacancy caused by the resignation of Democrat Robert F. Wagner. Dulles served from July 7, 1945 to November 8, 1949, when a successor, Herbert Lechman, was elected after beating Dulles in a special election to fill the Senate vacancy. In 1950, Dulles published War or Peace, a critical analysis of the American policies of containment, which at the time was favored by many of the foreign policy elites in Washington. I think he really works for the elite side, folks. I don't think he's anti-A-bomb at all. I don't think Kennedy, by his words, agrees with me. He does agree. This is his words, not mine. When Dwight Eisenhower, which Eisenhower was mentioned, these two are two corrupt, evil men. It's quite evident once you see the truth. Became president in January 1953. He appointed Dulles as the Secretary of State. Of course he would. Him and Eisenhower were both teaming up. They are the underworld's most corrupt men you'll ever meet in your life, and JFK gave both these names for a reason. And in connection with that, which is the truth, if you look at my Maryland videos, there is a connection to the JFK and Forrester, who was the head of the Defense Department, suddenly came up dead because he wanted to tell the truth and was against this insane, insane underground world of lying and criminals. He was suddenly murdered. Marilyn was murdered. JFK was murdered. Robert Kennedy was murdered. Mr. King was murdered. How many more murders must go on? There's definitely an underlying source. And these two characters are not to be trusted as far as I'm concerned. When Dwight Eisenhower became president in January 1953, he appointed Dulles. Of course he would. A Secretary of State. Dulles still carried out the containment policy of neutralizing the Taiwan Strait during the Korean War, which had been established by President Truman in the Treaty of Peace with Japan in 1951. He also supervised the completion of the Japanese Peace Treaty, in which full independence was restored in Japan under United States terms. Well, that's kind of funny for a man who actually smuggled in Nazi scientists, where we got, U.S. government got most of their information on all kinds of brainwashing and the, it says here, I'm going to skip a page here. He did the, no, I don't have it here, but he did that mind control, can't think of the mind control and all that German disgusting Satanistic rituals that Hitler used. I'm sure our government took up as much information from the Nazi scientists after smuggling them over. This is under the word Cromwell, which left me to Dulles. And I'd like to say one thing. He opposed the treaty that, again, JFK had requested to stop atomic testing because it contaminated the northern United States milk supply and wheat. And it took almost 8 years for other countries as well as our own to agree to ban atomic and nuclear testing. So there is a lot of reluctance and static against Mr. Kennedy's wishes, and Dulles was working alongside of him then, and he has a history of being very corrupt. And yeah, I was looking for it, but okay, well, Cromwell, to continue, in 1953, broke the Senate office and made false allegations against, I lost that, excuse me. Dulles was a CIA director, covert operation with Eisenhower, so they give him that job. And he also worked for New Look, MK Ultra, that's what I was looking for, mind control. He worked with that, and Sidney Gottlieb. They also are into Nazi criminals helped them escape to the U.S. And Dulles was a part of that. And he influenced foreign affairs, domestic media companies. Hello, a lot of our media companies. There's a lot of underground trash and conspiracy and lies through the media. Everyone knows that. Can't believe the media, folks. Foreign affairs. And as I said earlier, he handled the money. Then he worked for an attorney firm, Sullivan and Cromwell, Wall Street. I mean, this man has been moved around all over the board. And you can see where there's a lot of evil links tied into this guy. So basically, we'll go forward. Oh, and by the way, it said that, his history, family history, is also linked to the Catholic Church, and his other grandfather was a Presbyterian preacher. So, why is he so much for Christianity when he wasn't even raised a Christian? It makes no sense to me. And why would they put him on the Warren Commission after Kennedy's death? Another question. So let's go to video 3, and we'll continue on to investigate Mr. James Field.